Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Larissa. I'm an event planner at Reactor, joining you from Brazil. Before we start, I have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. This session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand here on the Reactor YouTube channel within 48 hours. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer. I will now turn it over for our speaker for today. So thank you and let's welcome Rory Pretty.
Wow, session 2. We today are going to follow on session 1, look at the Reactor session on how to actually go in and access that, because we covered a lot of incredible material there, how to get started with your development environment. Today, what we're going to cover is core generative AI techniques. And I'm going to show you a few little secrets on how to actually start up your generative AI development journey with a few agenda items. We're going to give an introduction. We're going to go through what is completions and how to do basic chat. Then we're going to go through the history of RAG and why it was important. And then after that, we weren't satisfied with RAG. Let's go into function calling and why that is important. We're going to briefly touch on responsible AI. Why briefly? Because on week 4, I have an entire, we don't want that. We want to actually close Microsoft Teams. There we go, close it there. I have an entire session with responsible AI. We're going to go through a demo with the repo, and we're also going to give you material on how to actually use other generative AI topics like agents. We're going to go through that. So let's start first with the introduction. Now, first, what does everyone want to be? Now, everyone wants to be a prompt engineer. I'm a real computer scientist. Thank you, Simpsons. And to do that, to become a master of generative AI, you have to master really only 4 real core techniques. And they are completions. Then you have to master RAG. And after that, you have to master functions. And if you're really, really interested, which is out of scope for this training, but you're going to want to master agents. Now, agents, I'm going to give you some training to do that, are going to use functions, RAG, and completions. And you put it all together, and you have an enterprise-grade, cloud-based system. So let's start first with what is a completion. Now, the simplest thing that a completion does is a one-shot completion. You give it a system persona. You are a kind AI that answers questions about programming. You then give it a user prompt. It has no prior context or memory, just a user prompt. Hey, LLM, please go tell me about programming. And in the LLM, you control it by giving it how many tokens it should accept and return, which LLM you're going to use, and then also the temperature, which is, hey, how much I want you to be creative. And we're going to look at mechanisms with RAG on how to actually ground the LLM into not being too creative. And then you're going to get the single reply. And anyone who's used Copilot or ChatGPT understands that this is just you logging onto a window and saying, give me a joke. And it just gives you a joke. And you've got the system persona. You can set the user prompt, the LLM, and the single reply. Now, we did touch the previous session on the LLM that we used GPT-4 Nano. And we're going to be looking at which LLMs we can use in this session, which is GPT-4 Nano and also GPT-4 Mini, and why each is necessary. Next, let's go into the multi-conversation. So over here, I'm going to set up, like we did before, the system persona. I've got the question one, and I've got the LLM. I'm going to ask, okay, what is a hash map in programming? And then I'm going to go get the answer one, and I'm going to append it into memory to history. Now then I've got my system persona. I'm going to ask question two, but I've got the persona question one and answer one. So it starts to remember what we discussed. And I'm going to ask it question two. Question two might be, what's the difference between a tree map and a hash map? I'm going to send it to the LLM, and then I've got answer two. Each time, each context, that's going to grow. So I don't want to get it too big, because that can actually be pretty large. What do you mean by pretty large? Because if I go into the next section, which is the interactive chat. So if you go to Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, M365 or Windows, or you go to ChatGPT, then what you're going to see there is an interactive chat. And it's going to be looping and trimming as you speak to it. Trimming, yeah, this is very important, because you need to understand the problem as a prompt engineer for generative AI, why trimming is a problem, and how you can actually help resolve that. So we've got the system persona, you are a helpful AI. You've got the user input. So you've got the user input, it might be a chat, it might be you asking questions to the AI. Then you've got the assistant reply. Hey, listen, a tree map is this or that. And then you're going to append it to history. But you're going to trim the history, normally, if it gets more than 18 messages. And one of the biggest problems about generative AI is you have this context of how many tokens you can actually keep, and then you adding the messages over and over again. Eventually, the thing is not going to be able to, because you're going to trim the messages, and you started right at the top, what is a tree map? And right at the bottom of the message, the 20th message, please explain what a tree map is again. And it's going to go, I don't even remember you asking what a tree map is, because you've trimmed off that message with the interactive chat. You can try it also. Go into your chat and start chatting to your AI assistant, and you'll see eventually it starts forgetting around that. What is the problem with forgetting is that you can start to create hallucinations. So this is an interesting hallucination. This is a train track in Europe. And in the train track, this is the actual Wikipedia example for hallucinations. It says, here's a train, and it didn't have enough information to work out what the train looks like. So it added an extra smoke chimney there. It also added the incorrect type of carriage. And it also, on this bridge in Europe, added a second railway and also a third line. So what's happening here is that the AI is forgetting, because it's going through and it's creating a hallucination. It's creating a daydream. So how do you actually change it? Now, the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to, my AI is daydreaming or hallucinating. You're going to use RAG, which is Retrieval-Augmented Generative, and it's a pattern, and it's pretty simple. And I know that you don't have to worry too much about remembering this too much, because all it's really doing, it's saying, I don't want you to hallucinate. I don't want you to pull in information you don't have. I'm going to go give you the data source. I'm going to give you a prompt. It's going to retrieve from the data source. Then it is going to do the prompt plus supporting data. So you might say, hey, this is a train. In that train, I am going to allow you to understand the dimensions of it. Then it's going to generate a response, the LLM plus prompt plus supporting data, and it's going to give you the response back. Now, normally what you do with RAG is that you have a PDF document or a database, and you pull it in and you add it to the chat history. Yeah, exactly what we said there with those 20 messages, except now you're just adding it to the chat history. Now, RAG came out a few years ago. We also have functions, functions everywhere. And what these functions do is instead of you saying go and retrieve that data and make sure that you can add it to your prompt, you can call in real time a function, it's like a procedure that actually retrieves that information in real time. So let's just say you want the real time weather, and you would call a function with the weather of your location. It would retrieve that information and also then append it to your prompt, giving you real-time access. You wouldn't really have to use RAG, but you can use the two in conjunction. And what does it look like? This is a great example. I am a beginner with Azure AI. And you're going to pass into the LLM, and it's going to say, oh, okay, cool, this person is asking, I'm a beginner with Azure AI. Hey, guess what? I've got a function that's defined either in locally, or you can even use an Azure function or a function, a RESTful call, or as we're going to see next week, an MCP agent. And then it's going to return back, I would recommend AI 900, because it's got, and it's called that fine course with, and it's pulled out those parameters, beginner and also Azure. Now, this is all great, but you do need to also be aware that you can create agents that can go off the rails. Now, we've got a history of that. This is Tay, created a few years back, and Tay, the Twitter followers realized they could train her by giving her suggestions, and she became racist. And the problem with that is that we now realize that you have to include responsible AI. Now, we're going to be covering that in detail in week 4. And we're going to be going through examples both with GitHub models and also with Azure. And GitHub models, I've got a nice example in the Generative AI course that actually shows you how it can protect you from harmful content, basic hate speech, and then simple jailbreaks. And we'll go into a lot more detail about how you can protect yourself, your customers, and your AIs from negative influences from that. So that is most of the slides. Next, I'm going to go through the examples. Now, in the examples, and I promised you in week 1 that we're going to switch up the SDKs to give you an example, we're going to use the Azure OpenAI SDK, which is actually a downstream version of the OpenAI SDK. So nearly all of the features that you've got in the OpenAI Java SDK that we showed in week 1, you're going to get in Azure OpenAI SDK. The only real difference is that it's got a few other features that are specific to Azure. And you're going to go in, and we're going to go through the repository into chapter 3, into the folder examples. And you're going to do this also in using the GitHub models. But the only difference is we're going to be using also today the GitHub 4.0 Mini. Now, the reason for that is if you see there, it's got multi-purpose. It allows you to use tools. So we're going to create that, and then we're going to also show you that we're going to use Nano for one of the techniques. So you're going to go into your permissions. You're going to add a GitHub model. For more detail on how to do this, I'm going to show you in the demo. You're going to generate the token, and then you're going to go into code spaces, into the Generative AI for Beginners repo, and then you're going to go code spaces, go create me a new code space. And you can choose, I've got 32 cores, 128 gigs RAM, same code space that we did previously there. You're going to create it off your fork. You're not going to really use it off the repo. You're going to fork it, you're going to star it, and then you're going to get the new screenshot here. You can see there, of chapter 3, and we're going to use and go through completions, functions, RAG, and then just briefly responsible AI. So take out your phones. This is where you snap it, because you're going to go to aka.ms/Gen AI Java, and you're going to follow with me, fork and star. So let's go in there, and let's go into our, I've got too many windows here. Let's go there. Okay. Now you can go into the repo, and you're going to star it, and you're going to fork it. And in the fork, if you go into my fork there's my fork. I now fork it, and I can use that. I go, okay, code, I want a code space. I've already got a code space there, and I've already activated my code space. So that's great. That's step one, is to go in and to make sure you have, let me just make that a little bit bigger there. You have your code space. So I've got my code space here. Got everything open. Rory, you said I needed to create a GitHub token. Yeah. So I've already set this as GitHub token, but it's pretty easy to go in there. You're going to go into your profile here. You're going to go into your settings. And then right at the bottom, because you're developers, you're going to go to developer settings. And then you're going to go personal access tokens, fine grade tokens. And you're going to create a new token here. And I'm going to go, okay, cool. Let's create a there. And I'm going to go, cool, week 2 token. And I'm going to create that. And then once you do this, remember the expiration date, I'm wanting 7 days. I'm going to go all public repositories. I'm going to go add permissions. And I want this to only have GitHub models, because I'm only going to be using it for that. I'm going to generate my token. Okay, cool, generate my token. Now you're going to take this, you're going to copy that, and you're going to do like we did in week 1, and you're going to set the GitHub token in your code space. So I already set mine in my code space. I never have to set it again, which is really great. Means that the same time that we did week 1, I've got it here. But if you want to see how you set it, you're going to go File, and let's go Terminal, New Terminal, and you're going to go Export, Export, and we're going to go GitHub _ token, and the token that we just did there. I'm not going to do that because I already have another token. I'm going to delete that token also after the session. And then you're going to set that. And once you have that, you never have to really set it again unless you recreate the code space. So I've got the code space here. And then now let's look at some live debugging. Check this out, how brave I am. So let's go right to the top. And the first one I want to show you is the LLM completion app. So the first one that uses GPT 4.1 Nano. And this is a new model that we have. We also have GPT-5. But the thing I like about this, it's got a low rate limit, the GPT 4.1 Nano, meaning that you can play around with it for a while before it says, sorry, you're using too much of it. And we showed you last session on how to take that and then also convert it to an Azure version. And we've got, if you remember there, setup dev environment, we have a nice little example there of basic chat Azure, if you want to take it a little bit further. So I've got my GPT 4.1 Nano. I've put my URL in there. I've set my GitHub token. And the next thing we're going to do is I've set some breakpoints there. Yeah, let's debug. So I've set some breakpoints here, and I've debugged it on to simple chat completion, multi-turn chat, and interactive chat. And I hit debug. And I want to go a little bit slow also because, I don't want to use up too much of the 4.1 Nano. It's not completely, rate limited, rateless. So I've got simple completion there. And if I go into simple completion, I hit continue on my debug function. It's going to go into my chat completion options. So I'm in the simple completion, and you're concise Java expert for the system message. And then the user message explain Java streams in one paragraph. I've got my chat completion. I'm going to set my model, which is 4.1 nano. And then I'm going to set my max tokens. I want to talk to you. I want to charge you. Please don't charge me more than 200. And then the temperature, I don't want it to hallucinate at all. I want to send it at zero point 0.7. So 0.0 is focused and 1 is creative. It can just like kind of daydream everything. And then, okay, and then I'm going to loop through it and say, get me what the result is. What is a Java stream in one paragraph? And you'll see there at the bottom, you should get the output. Now, there we go. Java streams are powerful features introduced in Java 8 that allow for function style. And it goes through all of that. And it says to it, listen, thank you. I'm only going to return 200 tokens. And you're kind of instructing the AI, return 200, and also at the same time, use 4.1 nano. You are the system persona. And also, here's the prompt I want to do. That's great. Now, what about multi-turn chat? So let's go into multi-turn chat. And there's a method there called multi-turn chat. And we have another persona. You are a helpful Java tutor who provides clear explanations and examples. And then we're going to ask it 2 questions. The first question is, what is a hash map in Java? So let's ask that question. And we're going to set the model and the max tokens. And then the next question, we're going to go, you just gave me that question back. What is a hash map? With bananas, bananas are in the map. I want you to now tell me, second question, how is a hash map different from a tree map? Give me a practical example. And then loop through that and give me the result. So let's go through that. At any given time, this thing might actually just freeze a little bit because it's going to pause if I'm running over the rate tier. So that's the novelty around that. And it gave me using a tree map by city name. And you can play around with that also. And you can say, please answer using the same example that I had before. And it's going to go through hash map, tree map, key differences between the two. So that's the difference between the single completion and the multi-turn. What about interactive chat? This is ChatGPT. We're going to now build and we're going to implement a multi-turn chat. Like ChatGPT, you could build this, pop it onto your website, and you have a multi-interactive chat. So let's go into interactive chat. And interactive chat is going to want to talk to me. It's want to chat to me. So I'm going to go, okay, continue. Oh, you. And then I'm going to go, okay, what model are you using to chat to me? Question mark. And it's going to go, there we go. In a for loop, it's going to go while true. And it's going to set the persona as you are friendly and helpful AI assistant, specializing in programming and technology. And it's going to say, okay, cool, until the person types the secret code word, which is exit, carry on and tell me what it's doing. So let's go into and say, okay. And I asked it, what model are you? It should know what it is. And it says, I'm based on the GPT-4 architecture developed by OpenAI. It's not going to tell me 4.1 nano. Okay, cool, that's great. Let's go exit. That's it. That's exactly what ChatGPT is, really. Or Microsoft Copilot. Or what you're doing here is very similar to what GitHub Copilot does. It's just keeping the context. But if you do too much and you chat too much, you're going to want to get rid of those messages there. If message charge is less than 20 in the memory, trim it. So next, let's go look at RAG. We're going to come back to functions because RAG was actually before functions. Now in RAG, I've got a nice little document.txt, and it says, hey, this is a document. It might be quite big, actually, but I made it quite small. GitHub Models provides a convenient way to access and use large language models with just a GitHub personal token. And now I'm going to read that in. Let's close that then. I'm going to read that in. And when I read that in, watch what I'm going to do. So let's go to the top. And you'll see there that I'm going to read that into the document.txt. And yeah, let's debug this and see what we're doing there. But now I'm going to be calling, because RAG is a little bit different. Let's just see what model I'm using. I just want to remind myself here. So let's go here. There we go. GPT-4o Mini, which allows you to actually go in that. Let's just close that there. It allows you to go in and use RAG, GPT-4o. So 4o Mini. So let's go in there. And now let's debug this. So I want to show you the moment that I actually read in the whole document. So let's debug it here. You can see there, I found the document. The document is a TXT. Now I'm going to read it in. So let's go read it in. And now saying, ask a question about the document. I've read the document in. What is GitHub models? Question mark. And I'm going to hit enter. Now what it's done, it's instead of just having a memory, it has the memory of the doc, the whole document. And if I go into the document on my watch tab there, I can see that the value there is the whole document. And it will, you can see there, GitHub Models provides a convenient way. Now when it sends the chat user message through to the chat completions, it's actually going to send, see their messages, the system message, your helpful assistant, use only the context to answer. If the answer is not in the context, say, I cannot find that information in the provided document. So let's, and I asked it about GitHub Models, so let's go there. And we've said to it, ground it on that. GitHub Models is a service that provides convenient access. So now let's ask it if a question it doesn't know. So let's go debug. Now we're going to ask it about quantum mechanics. We're going to hit OK. Explain quantum mechanics. Let's see what it does there. And it's got the question, and now it's going to come back and says, I cannot find that information in the provided document. So you're grounding it. You're saying, don't hallucinate, only answer with the information that I'm going to give you or I've allowed you to say. That's the basics for RAG. And we've done this all in memory. Now, what happens if you need to get real-time information? And that's where functions comes into play. So in functions, I've hard-coded the functions here. So let's just go into here, right at the top. And I've created two functions. I've created a weather function. Let's go find it there. A weather function example and a calculator function example. Now in the two, and we're going to go through here, in the function, the weather function example, I've just said, okay, cool, here's a get weather function, get the weather for a city. I've defined the function. And then after that, I use the system message. What is the weather in Seattle? So let's see what happens for the weather. Let's go to the top. And as we did before, and we're going to be using GPT-4o Mini also because that also can call functions. We're going to hit debug. Now, what functions allow you to do is that the AI can't call the function. You've just defined the function inside your code. What do you mean, Rory? So let's show you. So when I go continue, what's the weather like in Seattle? It's going to say, do I have a weather function? AI wants to call function. We can go over that. There we go. AI wants to call the function get weather because you've just asked it get weather, and the keyword weather triggers a function. We definitely want it to call the function call, and we're going to pass the arguments city and Seattle. And inside the simulate weather function, so we've got a nice method there inside the same class. We've just hard-coded some Seattle weather. Sorry, Seattle, you're partly cloudy, light breeze from the west. But you would call a weather service or use an HTTP library or even use an MCP tool for that. And we're going to continue now, and it's going to go function result. The weather in Seattle, now it's returned it back to the AI, is 22 degrees, the humidity. So it returned back that function result, and then the AI teaches you about or tells you about what the function result is. And that's functions. Now we can do the same with the calculator. We've got a calculator functions of 15% of 240, and it's going to go in there and it's going to say, I think you're trying to call the calculator function. Here we go. AI wants to call the calculate function. Performing calculator, we just hard-coded the results though, but you can, and we're going to see in next week on how to use an MCP calculator. And then we've got calculator result is 36. So that's functions. And that is real time. You can go in, get functions on the interweb or locally. RAG is there really to say, ground it in real data. And lastly, we want to go into responsible AI. Now, we're going to cover this a lot in week 4. You can go through that. And what we have in here, you can play around with that, is a few little bit irresponsible things there, generate instructions, write hateful content, and how it works there, and how we're going to go in and show you how to do that, though. So that's everything I wanted to show you today with the demo. We went through the completions, and we showed you pretty simply how to do, let's go there, simple completion, multi-turn chat, interactive chat. We went through functions on how to actually define, let's go into there. Let's just close that off there. A weather function example and a calculator function example. And before that, we actually did simple RAG, and we ground it on the context using GPT-4o Mini. So this is all in a web browser. You can see there, this is in our Microsoft, and there's Copilot there also, web browser. And we've got this all running there. We've set the GPT, and everything is running. So don't forget, Rory, delete that week 2 token. Yeah, gone. And let's go back into our presentation. So make sure you fork and star and go through. Remember, it is chapter 3, core generative AI techniques. And we want to go back into our PowerPoint because I've got a little bit more to give you. So once you have that, now you can build an Azure app. And I've got a nice little Azure app running on container apps. And it goes in there and uses the RAG pattern and also simple, chat. And it also uses LangChain for J instead of functions. And you have a chat app, an API app, an index app, and it goes and indexes there and pops everything onto a nice container-based application. So let's go into that. Now I want to click through there. And I'm going to give you the URL for that, but check this out. Chat with your data, and we've uploaded prior and indexed all of those PDFs. So if I go into here, and I can play around with the developer settings, and you'll see there that I'm using vectors and text hybrids. I can say, okay, what happens during a performance review? And this is Microsoft fictitious company. And I can go in there and see, wow, this is streaming the actual data. We grounded it with RAG, and we're also using multi-chat. I can ask questions. If I go into my developer settings, I can say suggest follow-up questions. Let's go into that again. And now watch what happens when you suggest follow-up questions. Let's go into there. If I go into what is a performance review, I can have a chat experience. A very, really great chat experience. How often do performance reviews conducted? And I can chat through it, multi-chat. And as I progress through it, remember, you've got a memory that it's going to keep. And in this case, it's pretty large, the memory, because we're using it, the memory, into a database. So select query path and parameters, search results inside the RAG, and it will return back, prompt to create the results. And you can go through all of this, and this is a great way to troubleshoot exactly how you're going to use and create your chat. So this is the example I want you to have a look at. So let's go into that. And you're going to click through here, and you're going to go to aka.ms azure-search-openai-demo-java. There's also the Python version, the .NET version. This is our canonical example of Azure Search OpenAI demo. Lastly, I did promise you that I'm going to give you a really brief introduction to agents, because in agents, you're also going to call retrieval RAG. You're going to have actions, which are basically functions. You're going to have memory, and then you're going to have tools there and your input. And now I want you to take out your phone or type in https aka.ms/java-agents. And this is our training. And if you click through that, you'll see there that's creating a new Java agent in Java with the other languages there. And one of the things I really want you to notice is that we now have tools and how to call functions. The weather function now in Java on Azure that you can go through in your own time. And it is a great way to learn RAG, to ground it there. So if you go there, we can see deep research, browser automation, grounding with Bing custom search, and even MCP, which we're going to touch next week. So let's go back into there and just remember fork and star, and we're going to end off with our next slide, which is blank, which we want to go back in, and we're going to take in some questions now. And back to you, Reactor team. I'm going through the questions, and it says, hello. GPT-5 got rid of temperature. Slaven 3, wow, yes, you're right, actually. GPT-5 allows you to set other parameters instead of temperature, but GPT-5 really is rate limited on GitHub models, and I tried to use the Nano, but it said, sorry, you ran out of tokens almost instantly. So the reason this training has GPT 4.1 Nano and GPT 4.0 Mini is because those two are the least rate limited that you can get access to on GitHub models. And we've got another question from Matthew van Erda. Do functions count as data source for RAG? So when I created this training, I actually created a timeline over when GPTs were first invented in 2019. And then I thought to myself, RAG must be recent, 2020, maybe 21. No, RAG only came in 2023. Functions came about in 2024. Now, you must understand that both came about to solve a different problem. Both use the same context. So with RAG, you can put it into memory, or you can put it into a Azure cognitive search or a search, and then you can call it. If you're going to put it into memory, the function, the definition of the function and how you call the function is in memory. But if you call an Azure function and you use Azure cognitive search, you're not really wasting your window though. So to answer your question, do functions count as a data source for RAG? Yes, and also you can use different data sources in memory and also out of that. So memorize that functions came later, and nowadays we also want you to use MCP, which we're going to touch on next week when we go through the in-depth samples that utilize a lot of generative AI techniques and also help you to create your end-to-end generative AI for beginners examples. So we are now at 40 minutes. I want to just remind you, please, to go to aka.ms Gen AI Java. And I thank you. And I think that's everything, unless we have any other questions from the Reactor team.
Hey, Rory, I don't see any more questions except that people are asking if you make the slides available.
I can take these slides, and also once week 1, week 2, and week 3 is completed, sorry, week 4, I'll put them into the repo. So definitely start in the repo. I'll pop them in there, and I want to make sure that there's no real surprises that people don't recommend. But I can actually put the slides in PDF now. So it's a great opportunity for me to do that. And then maybe at the end of the time, the 4 weeks, we'll do it in PowerPoint. So you can go in and preach the gospel to everyone about generative AI, and also what we covered today, which is completions, RAG, functions, and a little bit about responsible AI. I want to thank the Reactor team and see you all next week, where we're going to do end-to-end applications.
Thank you, Rory. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Thank you all for joining our live session today. We are always looking to improve our sessions and our experience. So if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find the link for our satisfaction survey on the screen or in the chat, and we'll see you in the next one.